Here we are. Hey, say hello.
Freedom! Amazing room, over 300 people here taking a stand for freedom of speech in the same venue where the Stand with the Prophet conference was held against free speech in the wake of the Charlie Hebdo slaughter. They were not even in their graves when the American Muslim community stood up against free speech. And so here we are today, standing up for free speech.
Amen, amen. And when's the show going to start, Pamela?
Right now. We're going to go up there right now.
All right, you go up there, then we'll hand it over to you. Pamela Geller, who is the brain trust behind putting all of this together. And this room is excitement. And the red carpet was pretty amazing. Oh, no, wrong show. All right, Tom Trento here. For those of you just cycling in, I am the director of the United West, and we are live streaming a very important First Amendment event. I can't stress this enough. This is not a hate Muslim event or anything like this. This is a focused First Amendment event. And in the United States of America, the First Amendment allows people, creative people, to create denigrating art about Jesus Christ. I'm a Christian. To create horrendous stuff about Judaism. To create despicable material about political people. But you know what? In a free society, when you could have the open exchange of ideas, you don't resort to violence. When you take a totalitarian, supremacist, authoritative perspective, the Sharia, you can't draw Muhammad. That's when problems occur. And this definitive event on this day is simply saying, look, Muslims may have a particular doctrine that runs their lives. God bless them, but that's not protected speech. That is protected speech, but that doesn't prohibit people in the United States of America from exercising First Amendment and creatively express what their vision or their concern or their drawings are about Muhammad or anybody else. That's the way it is. So right now, we are going to go live to Pamela Geller and start the show. Here we are. Give her a round of applause.
Let's get to our seats.
Like that.
First, I want to thank you, this room of brave freedom lovers, for coming to this event. It's no small thing. I know it and you know it, and yet you came, despite the threat. Thank you. We are here for freedom. Amen. Everything else is smear. We are here for free speech. Everything else is smear. We are here for freedom of conscience. Everything else is smear. We are here for individual rights. Everything else is smear. The terms extremist, as if pursuing good in the extreme might be a bad thing, or pursuing truth or freedom in the extreme might be a bad thing. Understand that the reason why we're in this room, in this venue, on this day, is because not a week after the Charlie Hebdo jihad slaughter, American Muslim groups held a conference in this room called the Stand with the Prophet Conference against Islamophobic speech. What is Islamophobic speech? If you oppose jihad terror, you're Islamophobic. They say I'm anti-Muslim. Really? Are you telling me that all Muslims support jihad? I mean, look, I don't have to pat on the back every Muslim that doesn't want to kill me. That's my bar. We are seeing increasingly in this country an abridgment on our freedoms, and most particularly freedom of speech. And I can tell you no society can stay free without it. Without freedom of speech, peaceful men are forced to resort to violence. As you see, this past week, another court case of mine, AFDI sued New York City, won again. Yeah. To run anti-jihad ads. Now, mind you, across this country, thousands of anti-Israel, anti-Jewish ads run. Nobody says anything. They don't have to sue. They run. Nobody destroys them. Nobody defaces them. Nobody vandalizes them. I put 10 ads in a subway. Every single one is destroyed within the hour. Well, and that's illustrative of the war on free speech. So now in New York City, being that I won, the New York City MTA board had a meeting and decided we're not taking political ads, any more political ads, ever. But this has nothing to do with Pamela Geller. This is a war. I submit to you that if you want to learn who rules over you, find out who you cannot criticize. The media is self-enforcing a Sharia. Under the Sharia, you cannot criticize or offend Islam. Molly Norris, a couple years ago, a little-known cartoonist, had an idea. You know, after the South Park producers were threatened because they had put Muhammad, in a teddy bear costume. I thought that was rather sweet. It's not how I would depict him, but whatever. And within 24 hours, there was a fatwa on her head. She was told by the FBI that she had to go into hiding, she had to give up her job, she had to give up her name, her home, everything at her own expense. And yet how many people know about Molly Norris? And why isn't Molly Norris the poster girl for the media? Instead, PEN, the Organization of Writers, gives an award of courage, Freedom of Expression Courage Award, to the Charlie Hebdo, now dead, editorial staff, and 145 writers signed a petition against the award. What next? Are they going to sharpen the blades of their executioners? It's madness. We are subjected to the most offensive attacks. Always. I don't even want to talk about what they call me. Hey, media, I'm offended. You don't seem to care about that. No special rights for special classes. So in the wake of the Stand With the Prophet conference, we decided to hold this event here. And you are all heroes. And special mention to Gail Mitchell and Dory O'Brien for helping me pull this together because I'm not in Texas. Big time, big time. And kudos to the over 300 cartoonists, wannabe cartoonists, who took the risk and submitted cartoons. Yes, they deserve, yes, very brave. Very brave. What is interesting is the winner of this cartoon is Jyllands-Posten. Jyllands-Posten is a former Muslim cartoonist. His graphic novel, The Infidel, is a story about twin brothers whose Muslim background comes to the forefront of their lives on 9/11. One responds by creating a counter-jihad superhero, a comic book called Pigman, while the other surrenders to Islam. Bosch's debut graphic novel, Table for One, received the praise of acclaimed American cartoonist Alex Toth, along with an Eisner Award nomination. This is a really brave human being. This work since 2004. Bosch was making cartoons then. And I can tell you, and I'm sure Robert can attest to this, in the beginning, everybody was like, yeah, 9/11, yeah, we're gonna take no prisoners, smoke them out, you know. And I don't know what happened. Everybody abandoned the field because they couldn't take the abuse from the media, from their friends. Look, nobody wants to be called a racist, even though Islam is not a race. Well, I'm going to say the Shahada, and all of a sudden it's going to change. Cuckoo. But this is the narrative. The whole adopting of the civil rights narrative. This is a destructive and a narrative that is advanced at every level in academia, in the public schools. You have to fight. You know what's going on in the public schools. You see it happening in Texas. The proselytizing. You must fight.
Geert Wilders mentioned that the PEN, a writers association that was founded in order to defend the freedom of expression, is giving an award to the Charlie Hebdo cartoonists. Pamela spoke about this as well. And that the 145 of the members of PEN, including some very prominent writers, Joyce Carol Oates, who you may have heard of, and some others, have pulled out because they say that this is manifesting cultural arrogance. They said that the French manifested cultural arrogance in drawing Muhammad and allowing Charlie Hebdo to draw Muhammad. They don't seem concerned about the cultural arrogance of the assassins who murdered these cartoonists in the name of a blasphemy law that the cartoonists did not hold. They didn't care about that imposition of one culture over another. They only cared that the French were following their own long tradition of free expression. Now that's a terrible thing for an organization that's designed to defend the freedom of expression. It's a terrible dissent, and it bespeaks a dissent in our whole culture in general. You will see around the room, you probably have already noticed as you were coming in, that we have some of the entries into the cartoon contest blown up, and we also have interspersed some historical images of Muhammad. Now, it's very noteworthy. Take a look as you're going out this evening. Take a look at some of these because you'll find them very interesting. Some of them are ancient Persian images made by Muslims. And nobody got killed. Nobody got death threats. Nobody was called a racist. They depict Muhammad cursing women in hell. They depict Muhammad beheading the Qurayza Jews, of which he massacred between 600 and 900, according to his earliest biographer. These are depictions by Muslims of Muhammad. Some of them you'll see his face is covered, but in some of them he's just depicted as he is in the cartoons that are more contemporary. Even more important, there are some images you will find from earlier centuries in the West, when we did have more cultural confidence. Dante Alighieri, the author of the Divine Comedy, it's a three-part allegory, one of the greatest poems in Western civilization, the great Italian poem, and he goes into hell, and then into purgatory, and then into heaven. And in hell, he meets all these people who've been damned to hell. One of them is Muhammad, because Dante was a Christian, and he viewed Muhammad as somebody who had tried to turn people away from the true faith and was thus condemned. His depiction of Muhammad in hell was made into a fresco which is on the wall of a church in Italy. It's been there for centuries. Now it's under armed guard. It was never under armed guard in the 17th century, the 18th century, the 19th century, only now. Why is that? Because now Muslims are, in the first place, much more present in the West than they were, but they're a much more aggressive presence in the West, and that is an aggression fueled in large part by our own cultural weakness. A very good friend of mine told me right before I left for this event that you're just poking them in the eye. You're trying to provoke them. You know, why are you doing that? You're the one that's being offensive. And this was a friend, you know, and I was kind of taken aback. And I had to stop and think, well, what exactly is wrong with that? And what's wrong with that is that this is only offensive because Muslims have made it offensive. This is only something, as Geert Wilders said, that needs armed guards because Muslims will kill you for drawing Muhammad. It would never be offensive otherwise. Consider this. The murderers of the Charlie Hebdo cartoonists had an accomplice, and as they were murdering the cartoonists, the accomplice went to a kosher supermarket in Paris and murdered 4 Jews. What had they done? They didn't draw Muhammad. How did they offend Muslims? They offended Muslims by being Jewish. Okay, so we have to not draw Muhammad because that'll poke them in the eye and offend them. And then we have to not be Jewish because that will poke them in the eye and offend them. And then what? Okay, I guess pork and alcohol are right out. Okay, and then what? Take humor, yes, and the Islamic State. The Islamic State is beheading people and taking sex slaves and subjugating the Christians under the hegemony of the Islamic law, and they're doing it all on the basis of Quranic directives, and so that's all Islamic. So I guess we can't say a word about that, because that would poke them in the eye and offend Muslims. And you see step by step by step we're ending up going in the direction of accepting Islamic law. And every Western media outlet that refused to publish the Muhammad cartoons was accepting Islamic blasphemy law. And so I say it's time for a little cultural self-assertiveness. In the 19th century, they didn't have these problems. There's the famous story that I'll close with from the British Raj, the British colonization of India. And in India, the Hindus, not the Muslims, but the Hindus, had the practice of sati, where the widow, the wife of a man who had just died, would be thrown upon his funeral pyre and be burnt to death. And the British outlawed it. And the Hindu delegation came to General Sir Charles Napier, who was the Governor General of the area, and they said to him, "You can't outlaw this. This is our culture." And he said, "Oh, it's your culture. Oh, well then very well. You live out your culture, but we also have a culture. And our culture is that men who force women to throw themselves on fires will be hanged by the neck until dead. So you live out your culture, and then we'll live out ours." In the West, we should be saying exactly that. Yeah, okay, you're going to kill for people who draw Muhammad, then we will protect people who draw Muhammad. And we will hunt you down and kill you for trying to kill people for drawing Muhammad. The freedom of speech is not an end in itself. The freedom of speech was put into the Constitution as our fundamental protection against tyranny. If the governing authority or any power that rules in whatever way, and as Pamela noted, you know, you want to know who rules over you, then find out who you cannot criticize. The people who have the clout, the people who have the power, if they are able to silence by the rule of law, by the force of law, those whose opinions they don't like, then a free society is dead. Then they can do whatever they wish unopposed, and dissent is impossible. And that's what this is all about. This is not about insulting Muslims or offending Muslims or poking them in the eye or even about drawing Muhammad. Ultimately, it's just that that's where they are making the line, then that's where we're going to stand. And we're going to stand against tyranny and for freedom. And so thank you so much for coming, and I will turn the proceedings over to Pamela to close the night's event.
We refuse to allow jihadists to dictate what we can and cannot say. That is the point of this conference. That is the point of freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is the foundation of a free society. Boom, literally. Without it, a tyrant can wreak havoc unopposed while his opponents are silenced. That's why you're here. And when you leave here, it's what you're going to tell your friends. And you're going to post the photos on Facebook. And you're going to show people how to be free and how to be brave and how to have the courage of your convictions. That's what we're doing here. Every newspaper that refused to run the Hebdo cartoons had blood on their hands. Because if every newspaper ran the cartoons from the giddy-up, as they say in Texas, if that Danish cartoon nonsense in 2005, where this small newspaper, had a contest to, draw Muhammad, and it was decided at an OIC conference, Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the largest world body of 56 Muslim countries, plus the Palestinian Authority, it was decided that they were going to impose the Sharia. That's what they were going to do. And here we are, 8 years later. You have a president of the United States not only declaring at the UN that the future does not belong to those that slander the prophet, but in the wake of the slaughter of our ambassador and military attachés and consulate attachés blamed the First Amendment. Completely and utterly falsely, as we now know, there was absolutely no truth to it, but even if there was, blaming the First Amendment, and the only one who went to jail was a YouTube filmmaker. Really the first political prisoner in this country under the Sharia. Think about it. Hillary Clinton, when she met with the families of the dead, of the murdered, said she was going to get that YouTube filmmaker. It's incredible. We are fighting for nothing less than a question of freedom or slavery. That's why you're here. That's why you must go out into the world and advance the fight for freedom. No one is going to save you. You are going to save you. There are no casual observers in this fight. And while they have the largest megaphone, they have the media, they have academia, they have the culture. David won too, you know. David won too. It is the future. It is, look, just the way we revered our grandparents and parents who fought and died in fighting the evil of Nazism. Our children and our grandchildren will despise us for leaving them held hostage by the most extreme and radical ideology on the face of the earth. We must stand up, and if history has taught us anything, it's that small groups, small movements can become huge intellectual movements. We need a revolution of the mind. We're right, we're righteous. Do not back down, never give up, never give in. Take this meeting with you right here and go to work. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming. God bless you. God bless you all.